In this video, I'm going to explain how you can make money passively from the stock market and how much money you would need invested through a few examples to earn $1,000 a month passively. The reason I chose $1,000 a month is firstly, it's a nice number, and secondly, it's not a ridiculous amount of money, and thirdly, it's not an insignificant amount of money. Before we get started, welcome to the Dana Yee Show, and on this channel, I cover all things money and finance related. So if you're interested in more, make sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video in particular, make sure to bop that like button. Okay, now onto the cool stuff. As always, I like to define stuff to give some context. What is passive income, first of all? Generally, passive income is income that you can make that you're not actively involved in. And actively involved here, for example, when you work a 9-to-5 job, you're putting in time and your effort, and in turn, you're getting paid. However, with passive income, you don't need to go to work or do these specific things. You can think of passive income as income you make while you sleep. And one quote, I believe Warren Buffett said that I wholeheartedly agree with, is that if you can't figure out a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. And this is just essentially saying, if you're always trading your time for money, you're never going to be truly financially free. So I want to talk about passive income here. To simplify my calculations, obviously $1,000 a month is $12,000 a year. And since some things might not pay out monthly or weekly or whatever, I'm going to use the calculation that whatever way you're investing is going to provide $12,000 of income annually. One way that a lot of people talk about is stock dividends. If you don't know, a dividend is a distribution of a company's earnings to a class of its shareholders, in which case, like the stockholders. And you can think of it as a way of companies rewarding their investors and shareholders for investing and believing in the company. And I'll give three, I think, vastly different examples of how you can earn dividends from specific stocks. Firstly, almost every dividend investor knows what AT&T is. Almost everyone, I feel like, knows what AT&T is. Obviously, AT&T is a telecommunications company, and they also own DirecTV, Warner Media, and other subsidiaries. Just looking at general performance of the stock, AT&T has not been doing super great over the past 5 years, but if you look, their dividend yield is 6.93%. So this means that for every $100 you have invested each year, they will pay you around $6.93. Oops, wrong money symbol. One quick mathematical calculation we can use to figure out how much money we need invested is to take the dollar amount that we want to earn and divide it by the dividend yield. So for example, in this case, as I briefly said before, we want to earn $12,000 a year, and our dividend yield is 6.93%, or as a decimal, 0.0693. And based on this calculation, you would need $173,160.17 invested in AT&T in order to earn $12,000 in dividends annually. Now, one thing to note, all these calculations are using dividend yield I pulled from March 23rd, the market close of March 23rd. So dividend yield changes over time and the price of companies change over time. So these are just sort of rough calculations and estimates. Okay, the next company, JP Morgan Chase. If you don't know what JP Morgan Chase is, it is an investment banking company, and it's actually the largest bank in the United States and has $3.213 trillion of assets. I actually do own some JP Morgan, so I thought this would be a good example. Anyway, if we look at the stock price for the past 5 years, it's been doing pretty well, pretty much just on the up and up until 2020, and of course, as pretty much any stock, crashed in 2020 and has been recovering really nicely and has actually surpassed its March highs from last year. We care about dividends, so if we look here, the dividend yield is 2.41%. Using the same calculation as before, promise this isn't a math class, so we'll just get this over with. So to earn $1,000 a month from JP Morgan dividends, you would need $497,925.31, which is quite a bit of money. One more stock example, Apple. I'm sure you've all heard of Apple. There's a high likelihood that you're watching this on an Apple device. Apple is a technology company, and currently I believe it's the most valuable company in the world. If we just look at the performance for the past 5 years, it's been doing spectacularly. And if we look at the maximum chart, it almost looks like an exponential graph. And like most other stocks, had a little bit of a dip in 2020, and Apple is quite on the rise since then. I do own some shares of Apple. I feel like almost every portfolio has at least one share of Apple. It's just a very solid company, and a lot of people know it and like it. If you look at the dividend yield, this one is relatively low. Apple's dividend yield is currently 0.67% using our calculation from before. So in order to earn $12,000 a year from Apple dividends, you would need $1,791,044.77. So that is quite a bit of money, and it goes to show how the dividend yield can affect how much money you would need to have invested in order to earn passive income. Okay, next type of way to earn passive income in the stock market are REITs. I feel like I've talked about them before, but just an overview. REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust, and REITs are sort of like a cheaper way to get into real estate, and they generally pay monthly or quarterly dividends and have generally high yields. So I think one of the most popular REITs, I don't have this one, but it's called Realty Income with ticker symbol O. They invest in a lot of commercial properties, and if we look at the past 5 years, they've been doing pretty well. Had a little bit of a decline in 2018, did well until 2020, had quite the crash, and hasn't really recovered since. So I would have to look more into the company to see what I think it would do in the future. But if we look, the dividend yield is 4.48%. So if we do our same calculation as before, we would need to have $267,857.14 invested in Realty Income. One more example of a REIT. This is, I think it's the only REIT that I own, but it's National Health Investors. I probably have briefly talked about it, but they invest in a lot of healthcare facilities, senior nursing homes, and things like that. Over the past 5 years, it's been growing pretty slowly but steadily. Obviously in 2020, it has had a crash, and I picked up some around here, and it's had actually a pretty good run since then. If we take a look, their dividend yield is 6%, which is nice. And if we do our same calculation as before, you would need $199,335 in roughly 55 cents invested in National Health Investors to get $12,000 a year in passive income. There are some ETFs and stocks that are more income focused, so not a lot of growth. So for example, something like QYLD, which is the NASDAQ 100 covered call ETF, you won't see a lot of capital appreciation, which is to say the price of the stock won't go up much. If you actually look at the all-time chart, it hasn't reached where it opened at, but it does provide really, really good income. If you'll note here, this dividend yield 11.68%, almost 12%. So if we do our standard calculation, $102,739.72 invested in this specific ETF. Now, just for a sort of extreme example, I tried to find the stock with the highest dividend yield, and the highest one that I could find is SHLX, or Shell Midstream Partners. I think this is the company where their logo is like the yellow shell. They do oil stuff. If we look at their all-time chart, it's not that pretty. It started rising a little bit, and then it's pretty much been on a steady decline since its inception. However, the dividend yield is quite juicy. It is almost 15%, so 14.72%. And if we do our standard calculation here, you would need $81,521 and roughly 74 cents invested in this company in order to earn $1,000 a month from dividends. This is the lowest number that we've seen, but I do want to say that I think companies like this might be dividend traps, because if you look at the price going down, even if the dividend yield is really, really high, if the price keeps going down, you might actually lose money over time. So I would be very careful when you see companies with very, very high dividend yields. Okay, now onto my favorite way of making passive income in the stock market is selling options. I will cover more how these specific strategies work, but I'll give brief overviews and give examples. My favorite example, as always, is Tesla. We all know what Tesla is. Tesla is very volatile, and options are priced with volatility in mind. So that's to say that stocks that tend to move a lot have higher options premiums, and as an options seller, you want premiums to be really high. I took this screenshot from a couple days ago. It is a lot here, but I'll just point out the important stuff. The left side here is calls. So if I wanted to sell a call, I would sell for around this green price call, or the bid column. And options are for 100 shares. So it would be like this amount times 100. So for example here, if I sold a 6775 call, I could earn about $935. And I think this was for about a week out. So if we look, if you sell a call that's about $13 above Tesla's current price, so $675, you could earn about $10,000, I can't read, $1,000.30, so $1,000.30 a week by selling calls on Tesla. However, this does have a lot of inherent risk. Firstly, you need 100 shares of Tesla, so at this current price that I screenshotted at, so that would be $66,216, which is actually the lowest of all the numbers that we've seen so far. And also note that this would be per week, so this would actually be about $4,000 a month. So one more example for options/covered calls, the ticker symbol EXPI or EXP World Holdings. So I have 100 shares of EXPI, which means that I'm allowed to sell a covered call against my shares. So if we look at this example above, this -1 here just means that I sold the option. So I got paid to sell this option. Of course, that's how selling things works. And I was credited $204.35. In order to make this $1,000 a month, obviously you would need to about roughly 5 times this, which means owning 500 shares of EXPI, and at the price of this screenshot, EXPI was $29. Nope, that's not right. $46.29. So if you wanted to own 500 shares of this would be around, I seem to be unable to talk and write at the same time, 23,100, and my goodness. So this would be around $23,145. So that is actually the lowest amount of any of them that we've seen so far. Unfortunately, I don't have 500 shares, so I can't do the $1,000 a month on this yet. So what was the point of all of these examples? Passive income in the stock market can be super varied in terms of risk and reward. So how you actually go about doing it, whether it be dividends, REITs, covered calls, or something else, it's up to you, of course. And in this video, I covered a few ways that you can go about it and how much money you would need invested for each specific way in order to earn $1,000 a month passively. Ultimately, the point of this is I wanted to show that you can earn money passively from the stock market. And although the numbers I showed today might be really, really large for you, or really, really small depending on who you are, it doesn't take a ridiculous amount of money to get started investing in the stock market. One misconception I feel that some people have is this idea of once I have money, I'll start investing, but I don't really see it that way. I think you should start investing as early as possible and build up a habit of, if you can, $100 a week, maybe $200, slowly increase it over time. Slowly investing and consistently investing over time, I believe, is going to yield the best results, and you don't need $1 million or $10 million to get started in the stock market. You honestly only need a couple bucks if you really wanted to get started. Okay, so hopefully some of these examples were enlightening. Maybe you have some gears grinding about how you can start earning passive income from the stock market, and ultimately I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.